Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life? Like you're meticulously playing a part, day in and day out, a role written by everyone else but yourself? What if one morning the mask became so real, so heavy, that you barely recognized the person staring back? Or worse, what if that reflection wasn't even human anymore? This isn't just a flight of fancy, it's a terrifyingly resonant question at the heart of a literary masterpiece. Today, we're diving deep into Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, not just as a bizarre tale of a man turning into a giant insect, but as a stark mirror reflecting the silent transformations many of us undergo when we live to please others. We'll explore how the desperate need for approval, the crushing weight of expectation, and the slow erosion of self can turn a vibrant human being into something less. This journey is about recognizing those chains and finding the courage to break them. Gregor Samsa, a diligent traveling salesman, wakes up one morning not to the familiar comfort of his bed, but to the horrifying reality that he has become a monstrous vermin. His first thought? Not, how did this happen, or what will become of me, but, oh God, I'm going to be late for work. This single absurd reaction sets the stage for a profound exploration of duty, identity, and the often unseen sacrifices we make. Before this grotesque transformation, Gregor's life was already a metamorphosis of sorts, a slow shift from individual to instrument. He was the quintessential provider, the uncomplaining workhorse. He rose before dawn, braved the elements, endured the monotony of travel and the demands of an unappreciative boss, all to support his family after his father's business failed. 5 years he toiled, without a single day off, without a murmur of complaint. His own dreams and desires deferred, perhaps even extinguished. This isn't some archaic fable, is it? How many of us know this grind? The alarm clock shrieking in the dark, the hurried breakfast, the crowded commute, the relentless pressure to perform, to achieve, to provide. We tell ourselves, I can be tired, but I cannot falter. I can be weary, but I must not break. This mantra becomes a subconscious script etched into the very fabric of our adult lives. We become cogs in a machine, our days a blur of obligations, our identities increasingly intertwined with our productivity. Milan Kundera, another master of observing the human condition, noted this kind of existence, devoid of initiative, devoid of creativity, devoid of freedom, governed only by orders and rules. Gregor, even as a human, was already trapped. He fantasized about quitting, about telling his boss exactly what he thought, but the reality of his family's debt, their complete reliance on him, always silenced that rebellious voice. He was their pillar, their hero, and heroes don't crumble. Or so he believed. This pressure isn't unique to Gregor. Think about your own life, or the lives of those around you. The mortgage that needs paying, the tuition fees for the children, the medical bills for aging parents, the car loan, the student debt. These are the invisible chains that bind so many, the responsibilities that often force us to put our own needs, our own well-being, on the back burner. We push through exhaustion, through illness, through a gnawing sense of dissatisfaction because the alternative seems unthinkable. To stop, to rest, to reconsider feels like a betrayal of those who depend on us. But Gregor's situation, his physical transformation, forces an abrupt halt to this relentless cycle. His new, cumbersome body, with its tiny, flailing legs, makes his old life impossible. It takes him hours just to roll out of bed. By the time he manages it, he's already an hour late for work. And true to the nature of a system that values productivity above all else, his absence is immediately noted. the chief clerk from his firm arrives, not out of concern, but to investigate. This experience is a harsh echo of what many face in the modern workplace. We've all heard stories, or perhaps experienced it ourselves. The employee who dedicates years, countless overtime hours, their very lifeblood to a company, only to be unceremoniously let go at the first sign of illness, or when a cheaper replacement is found, or when they simply age out of perceived usefulness. There's a cold, hard truth often whispered in corporate hallways. They only care how high you can fly, not how tired you are. No one paused to understand Gregor's metamorphosis. No one offered to help him find a cure. The focus, as it often is, was on self-interest and the bottom line. When we first step into the professional world, we're often brimming with ambition, fueled by the belief that hard work will inevitably lead to recognition, promotion, and financial security. But years of navigating the corporate maze often lead to a sobering realization. For most, work is primarily about survival. Even extraordinary effort might yield temporary gains, a higher salary for a while. But as age advances and health perhaps wanes, the relentless wheel of progress can just as easily cast you aside. The company will move on without you, but if you lose yourself, if you sacrifice your health in its service, that's a loss from which recovery is infinitely harder. It's a stark reminder: no job, no matter how prestigious or well-paying, is worth the systematic destruction of your well-being. The first and most crucial investment must always be in your own health, your own self. Gregor's transformation didn't just horrify his employer, it sent shockwaves through his own family. His father, far from showing compassion, reacts with disgust and aggression, driving Gregor back into his room with a stick and a rolled-up newspaper. His mother, terrified, screams for help. His sister, Great, initially the most sympathetic, weeps in despair. Gregor, retreating into the shadows of his room, understands their fear. His appearance is undeniably shocking, but beneath this surface-level fear lies a deeper, more insidious dread. Gregor, the family's sole provider, their unwavering pillar of support, has now become their greatest burden. He has lost his job. He can no longer provide. The family's savings, he knows, will only last them about 2 years. The pillar has crumbled, and now each family member is forced to confront a reality they had long been shielded from. They must fend for themselves. And so they adapt. The father, once retired and lethargic, takes a job as a bank messenger. The mother, frail and asthmatic, begins sewing lingerie for a local shop. Great, his beloved sister, whose musical talent Gregor had dreamed of nurturing by sending her to the conservatory, abandons her violin lessons and finds work as a salesgirl. The entire household dynamic shifts. Everyone is busier, more stressed, and Gregor, confined to his room, becomes a true outcast, a literal bug in the machinery of their new lives. It's a poignant illustration of a painful truth. Sometimes, even within families, love and support can be conditional, tied to what you can provide rather than who you are. Those who are accustomed to being the umbrella, shielding their loved ones from the storms of life, can forget that the rain might one day be too heavy, soaking them to the bone, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. There was a striking advertisement from Singapore, I recall, titled Father's Promise. It depicted a man, an office worker, caught in the relentless grind. Early mornings, late nights, constant calls from home requesting money for this or that. He never failed to send money to his parents, yet his father often complained if the amount was less than the previous month. When his mother fell ill, he rushed to the hospital, frantically trying to arrange a decent room, but struggled. His wife longed for a vacation, a simple escape, but he could only look away, murmuring, "It's too expensive, maybe somewhere closer." The fridge needed fixing, his mother's phone needed replacing, his wife's due date was approaching, bringing with it a host of new expenses. He worked tirelessly, yet all he seemed to receive in return was his father's dissatisfaction, his mother's quiet resignation, and his wife's growing disappointment. Finally, in a moment of heartbreaking honesty, he confesses, "I'm sorry, I can't give you the best. I haven't become the person you hoped I would be." This resonates so deeply with Gregor's predicament, and indeed with the lives of many. From the moment we are born, we are often saddled with the expectations of others. Parents dream of us excelling in school, landing high-paying jobs, making them proud, finding the right partner. Bosses expect unwavering diligence, peak efficiency, and total commitment. Partners and friends hope for understanding, empathy, and constant availability. These expectations, however well-intentioned, can feel like heavy chains, binding us to a path that isn't truly our own. If we live solely to meet these external demands, we risk losing ourselves, becoming a distorted reflection of what others want us to be, rather than the authentic individuals we are meant to become. In the novel Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, a central theme is the struggle, the lifelong endeavor to escape the expectations of others and discover one's true self. Let's be honest, completely escaping others' expectations is incredibly difficult, perhaps even impossible in a social world. We are interconnected beings, but we cannot and should not live inside those expectations as if they are our own skin. Expectations at their best are well wishes, blessings bestowed upon us. They should not become the rigid blueprints for our lives. Our primary duty is to work towards realizing what we truly desire, what aligns with our own values and aspirations. Ask yourself, how much do I care about what others think of me? Am I playing roles, fulfilling expectations, just to gain a sense of validation, a fleeting feeling of self-worth derived from their approval? If the answer is yes, then ask yourself a more profound question. Why am I allowing others to define my value? We each have only one life. If you spend that entire life striving solely for the admiration and approval of others, you will inevitably sacrifice so much of what could have brought genuine meaning and joy to your own existence. There's a saying, to manipulate others is a sin, to be manipulated is a misfortune. Don't build your life on the foundation of others' expectations, and equally, don't try to live vicariously through or impose your unfulfilled dreams on anyone else. Don't lose your own compass in a desperate attempt to gain validation from someone else. The true north for your heart lies in the courage to be disliked, the courage to live for yourself, the courage to love yourself. This is the destination we should all be striving for. As Gregor's condition persists and his family adjusts to their new, harder lives, his position within the household deteriorates further. The initial shock and fear give way to a weary tolerance, and then to neglect and resentment. He was once the umbrella, shielding them from every storm. Now, as a helpless insect, he is seen as a ticking time bomb, a source of shame and inconvenience. For the first month, his sister Great still showed some care, bringing him food, though it was often scraps he couldn't stomach, and cleaning his room. But as the novelty wore off and the reality of his permanent state set in, her efforts became perfunctory. The food became leftovers, carelessly tossed into his room, accompanied by an increasingly impatient demeanor. Gregor, despite his grotesque form, retained his human consciousness, his longing for connection, his understanding of their struggles. He didn't blame them, not really. He still yearned to be their provider, to somehow revert and resume his role. But it was his attempt to protect his family one last time that sealed his fate and revealed the true depth of their alienation. One evening, the family had taken in 3 lodgers to supplement their income. Greta was asked to play the violin for them. As she played, Gregor, moved by the music and by a surge of love and pity for his sister, who looked tired and worn, crept out of his room. He wanted to signal to her, somehow, that he appreciated her music, perhaps even to suggest she play for him in his room, away from the indifferent lodgers who were smoking and talking, clearly unimpressed. Unfortunately, his appearance startled and disgusted the lodgers. They immediately gave notice, refusing to pay for their stay, and threatened further action. This was the final straw. The family's patience, already worn thin, snapped. It was Greta, once his closest confidant, who delivered the fatal blow. In a fit of rage and shame, she declared, "We can't go on like this." If this were Gregor, he would have realized long ago that human beings can't live with such a creature. He would have gone away on his own. We must try to get rid of it. She, who had once been his champion, now refused to even call him by his name, referring to him only as it. She locked him in his room, and as the door closed, Gregor saw his family for the last time. His sister clinging to his father, his mother already asleep in her chair. They seemed peaceful, almost as if he had never existed. That image, that utter rejection, extinguished the last spark of hope within him. A writer once said, "Only when you are at your lowest, most insignificant point do you have the best chance to see the truth of human affairs." Gregor had given everything to his family, believing his sacrifice was a pure, unselfish act. He forgot that human nature, at its core, often leans towards self-preservation, and that even the deepest bonds can fray under prolonged strain. The next morning, the charwoman found him, a desiccated husk on the floor. Gregor Samsa was dead, alone and unmourned. His tragic end teaches us a bitter lesson. Do not overestimate your importance in any relationship, especially those built primarily on financial support or on a foundation of endless, one-sided giving. There's a psychological concept, sometimes called the over-justification effect, or similar to what the original transcript called the Westerner effect, which suggests that while moderate rewards can motivate, excessive or constant giving can, paradoxically, diminish the perceived value of the giver and the gift. The recipient can become desensitized, even entitled. Applied to emotional giving, consistent, appropriate care is like a nutrient for a healthy relationship. But if you exhaust yourself trying to be everything to someone, bending over backward to please them, your efforts can eventually be taken for granted, even becoming an unwelcome burden or an expectation. The author of Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte, through her characters, might have cautioned, "Love yourself first." Don't pour out all your love, your soul, your strength like a lavish gift wasted on those who neither need nor appreciate it, those who belittle your sacrifice. In this grand theater of life, each of us is the protagonist of our own story. Don't relegate yourself to being a supporting character, or worse, a tragic hero in someone else's play. The true source of Gregor's misery wasn't just his physical transformation into an insect. It wasn't solely the cruelty of his company or the eventual coldness of his family. His deeper, more profound unhappiness stemmed from the fact that he had abandoned himself long before his body changed. On the surface, it seemed he had no choice but to work tirelessly to pay off his family's debts. But consider this. In his youth, when he was full of vitality and potential, did he ever truly explore more efficient, more fulfilling ways to manage that debt? Did he ever seek joy or personal growth in the small interstices of his grueling life? Or did he simply resign himself to the grind? As Kafka himself implies, the fear of losing one's job, the fear of not meeting expectations, can corrode a person's character, their very spirit. This kind of life, while appearing stable, is a slow suffocation. In Gregor's case, his relentless, unquestioning toil gradually stripped away his freedom, his agency. He turned his own life into a prison long before his room became one. And what about his family? Yes, they faced financial hardship, but they weren't utterly destitute. They were all capable of working, even while carrying debt. Yet Gregor unilaterally placed himself in the role of the sole savior, the ultimate pillar. He would pay off the debt, buy his parents a comfortable retirement home, fund his sister's musical aspirations. These ambitions, while noble on the surface, went far beyond reasonable familial duty. They inadvertently fostered a dynamic of dependency, allowing his family to develop a habit of expecting, relying, and, perhaps unintentionally, exploiting his labor under the guise of familial love. When you make others' needs the absolute center of your universe, your own value becomes perpetually tethered to their demands and their judgments. The most dangerous consequence of this self-abnegation is that you forget the vital practice of daily self-reflection, of checking in with your own soul. You stop questioning, stop fighting against the distortions, and slowly, insidiously, become a slave to the lives and expectations of others. For Gregor, the acceptance and validation of his family became the only reason he could endure his monstrous form, the only thread connecting him to a life worth living. On that fateful night when they explicitly cast him out, Gregor, the man who lived entirely for others, lost his last reason to exist. The story's chilling irony is that after Gregor's death, the family experiences not grief, but a profound sense of relief. They feel a burden has been lifted. Even more disturbingly, the narrative doesn't end on a purely somber note for them. With Gregor gone, his parents turn their hopes and future expectations towards great. Observing her, now young, vibrant, and full of life, a disturbing thought arises. What if, one day, she too becomes a monstrous insect, her wings metaphorically broken, if she, like her brother, dedicates her life solely to fulfilling her parents' expectations, to pleasing them at all costs? The truth is, while most of us won't literally transform into insects, many of us live lives not unlike Gregor's. We constantly strive to satisfy others, to meet external benchmarks of success and approval, often at the expense of our own inner peace and authenticity. Gregor's metamorphosis can be seen as a brutal punishment, yes, but it's also a stark warning to us all. It's a call to recognize the people and patterns in our lives that lead us to take our own well-being for granted, to identify those who treat our contributions as entitlements rather than gifts. The meaning of our existence isn't found in becoming the person others need us to be. Our efforts, our sacrifices, should not be assumed or endlessly demanded. The paramount task is to ensure that the value you create, the life you build, genuinely belongs to you. To be considerate of others? Yes, absolutely. Empathy and compassion are vital, but you must also live for yourself. This balance is the strongest armor you can wear in this often challenging world. Remember this: throughout your entire life, you are not meant to be a living embodiment of your parents' regrets or unfulfilled dreams. You are not a perpetual servant to your children's needs, nor are you merely a shadow of someone else's desires. The most critical journey in life is the one that leads you to face, understand, and embrace your true self. When you begin to live authentically, in alignment with your own values and desires, your life will naturally become more confident, more serene, more you. I want to close today's reflection with a poignant quote from the renowned writer Eileen Chang. We once longed for the recognition of the outside world, only to finally realize that this world is our own and has nothing to do with others. May you and I and all of us find the courage to live in our own light, to bravely step forward and meet the best version of ourselves, a version that is true, authentic, and free. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into a story that, while fictional, holds so many truths about our human experience. If this video resonated with you, if it sparked a thought or offered a new perspective, please consider sharing it with others who might benefit from this message. Show your support for this channel by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing if you haven't already, and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss out on future explorations into life, literature, and personal growth. Your engagement truly helps this community grow. Thank you once again, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next video.